Okay, so we've seen a bit about the history of the human species, the insights we can gain from anthropology, a little bit from neuroscience about how stories um, work on us. And now it's time to discover the public narrative method itself. Professor Gans says human beings, we naturally communicate our values through stories, as we've seen. So, public narrative is a leadership method that harnesses this power to create the motivation necessary to act in favor of the change we seek. That knowledge and data can influence belief, but only emotions and values can create the motivation to act. And collective action is what we're aiming at through developing this method of public narrative. Professor Gans um, was born to a Jewish family, rabbi, and army chaplain, lived in Germany as a child. Dropped out of Harvard in the early 1960s to work as registering voters in the civil rights campaigns in the American South for African Americans to have their rights to vote, and then moved to California and worked as an organizer in the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Following this, served as a strategist and a trainer for campaigns, issue campaigns in California, as well as electoral campaigns of young politicians, names you might know like Nancy Pelosi or Jerry Brown, who was first the youngest and then the oldest governor in California history. And then came back to Harvard in the 90s to finish his degree, get his PhD, and has been teaching at Harvard ever since. I met Professor Gans as a young activist, campaign organizer for Howard Dean, a candidate for the presidency in 2004, and many of the methods and techniques that we experimented with on that campaign in 2003, 2004 became the core of the organizing strategy for Senator Barack Obama in 2007, 2008, in which Marshall Gans served as a coach and a strategist and a mentor to many of us on Senator Obama's campaign. Marshall talks about community organizing as a series of practices that draw on the heart, the head, and the hands. So the heart are the values that we express naturally in stories that motivate us, that drive us to take action against seemingly long and difficult odds. That the head is the series of habits of mind and experiences that allow us to create winning strategies, including creating a theory of change, mapping power in a community, and building a coalition with different roles and messages. And then the hands are the capacity to take action and learn, right? So that we're not just theorizing and coming up with strategies in a room, but we're on the ground acting and learning constantly. And Marshall says we don't have all the leadership we need in the world. A leader is not someone with a fancy title or a fancy diploma. A leader is anyone who takes responsibility to enable others to achieve a common goal in the face of uncertainty. Leadership is not a status, it's a practice. It's something that anyone can practice and everyone should practice on the issues that matter to them. We practice a kind of leadership called interdependent leadership. So it's a alternative to a model of leadership based on centralizing power, trying to take care of everything yourself. It's also antithetical to anarchy or unstructured leadership, which is also sometimes practiced in advocacy campaigns where because we don't want to be tyrants or dictators, we don't have any structure, and that can lead to chaos and dysfunction. And that was one of the problems with, for example, the Gilets Jaunes movement in France or the Occupy movement in New York, was that kind of deliberate, unstructured nature posed problems when it came to strategic capacity of the movement to build a durable pressure on the political system. So interdependent leadership requires structure, but it requires leadership being practiced differently at different levels in ways that amplify, connect, support each other within and across a movement or a campaign. So stories are that kind of connecting tissue between members of a campaign. He says, okay, how do you not tell an inspiring story? Well, first, you don't. A story is not just a list of things that happened to you. Often, if we are not practiced storytellers, we just say, okay, a story is all the things that happened to me. So this happened, and this happened, and this happened. No, a story needs to be shaped. A story needs to be structured. A story is not a list of the great things you've done in your life. Here are the schools I've went to. Here are the jobs that I've had. No, it make you feel good about yourself, but it's not going to inspire others to take action. And finally, an inspiring story is not transactional. It's not a deal. Okay, if you do this, I'll do that. Because transactions have a tendency to be temporary and to disappear as soon as the transaction is finished. Whereas what we try to do as an organizer or as an advocate is to build durable relationships that can survive setbacks and disappointments. And transaction relationships don't survive those moments, right? But relationships built on common values and common meaning can survive those difficult moments. So as we've seen in David and Goliath and the studies from anthropology, Marshall teaches that every inspiring story has these same three elements. A plot that begins with a challenge that then calls the protagonist to make a choice for which she or he was not prepared. And then in that choice and the outcome of that choice gives the story its moral, right? And this is the kind of core idea of public narrative, is that every story has something like this. It might not always be in the same order, or it might be multiple challenges or multiple choices, but these elements are present in all of the great stories that inspire us. So we talk about three different kinds of stories in public narrative. Stories of self, which are stories about personal experiences that show what matters to us in the choices that we've made in the past. We transmit to others, we share with others what matters to us, and therefore why it's important to play a leadership role, to do more than the minimum, to achieve a common goal, to challenge systems of power, to challenge injustices, and build a strategy to win. Stories of us are stories about common identity. They're the stories that groups, campaigns, movements build to create a sense of solidarity, a sense of a unique role that this community plays in the world, or a unique set of values and experiences and symbols that make the community worth fighting for. And finally, a story of now is a story about strategy and action. What is the challenge that confront us today? What are the risks if we don't rise to the moment? What is the opportunity if we do take the right actions? And what does each of us have to do? So stories of self and stories of us take place in the past, right? They're stories that show who we are individually and collectively. And story of now turns us toward the future. What is the future we can picture? How is that different from the difficult future we see in front of us today? And how do we take action to close that gap, to jump from here, the state of the community that we don't find satisfying, to a future vision that will be satisfying and that will make us all better off? And these three stories fit together in ways that we're going to see. We're going to start by looking at story of self, and with an example from Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai.